One of the special things with Lisbon is the light. It changes all the time, and that's also perhaps why all my films are set in Lisbon. I'm trying to catch some of that light or some of those variations of light. I'm JoC Pedro Rodrigues, I'm a film director. I live in Lisbon, and I'm going to show you some of the places that I prefer, that are closer to me in Lisbon. So here we are in Bairro das Estacas, which means neighborhood of the pillars. You see a lot of houses that are built over pillars. It's a kind of architecture that was invented by Le Corbusier, and this was built by a Portuguese architect that was very influenced by him, called Formosinho Sanches. And this is part of the new Lisbon. It's when Lisbon was expanding in the late 40s, 50s. This kind of architecture is very filmic in itself. And what I tried in my films was to reveal the kind of the mysteries and secrets that are in these places, and that these mysteries mingle with the story of the film, and they become the film. So here, the main character of the film, who is a trash collector, he's running away from his colleagues and he's handcuffed. And I decided to shot it here because perspective gives the idea that he's running away and he won't never stop running away. I have a love-hate relationship with this city. I always wanted to get out of Lisbon. I always wanted to live somewhere else, but finally I always stayed here. For me it's difficult to have, especially fiction, to imagine stories in other cities other than Lisbon. I'm obsessed with these places. It's as I have not a catalog, but a lot of places in my head, and while I'm writing the scripts, suddenly they find a place in that story. So here we are at the Cemitério dos Prazeres, which means Cemetery of the Pleasures. It's the main or the most important cemetery, even though it's not the oldest cemetery. The fact that this cemetery is called Cemetery of the Pleasures, which is in a way a contradiction. It's a beautiful contradiction. This is the cemetery of Lisbon, which is more monumental. The cemeteries are like cities, and they have avenues, streets, intersections, and that kind of geometry, which also refers to modern architecture, perhaps. All my films deal with questions of life and death, and a lot of my characters are a bit necrophilic. In my last film, the character is a transsexual, and she's very religious. And the film talks about that contradiction of being religious and transsexual at the same time. This is the main place where people go out at night. It's a neighborhood that is called Bairro Alto, which means a neighborhood up on a hill. There are bars, there are restaurants, there are some small clubs, but it's mainly small bars where people go and they buy drinks and drink them on the street. When people go out in Lisbon, it's very typical that they just go to one bar, then change to another one, and then change to another. They are always changing places and not staying in the same place. We are in a ferry that goes across the river, and is mainly taken for people that come to Lisbon and to Almada just to work. So it's not a touristic ferry, it's just a ferry that people take every day, at every hour. You get the sense of the city, that the city is crossed by the river, and the relationship between the city and the river. Recently was the rehabilitation of the waterfront of the city, and because there was not really places where people could go or could be by the river, and you see a lot of places appearing, and restaurants, cafes, and bars, and people are more conscious of that they have a river and that the river exists. So we are on the other side of the river. Lisbon is behind us. It's on my back. In a place called Cacilhas, which is part of a city called Almada. I think that Lisbon, although it's a city that it's by the river, has been with its back against the river most of its time, especially in the last century, in the 20th century. And we are now trying to turn ourselves towards the river and the sea. The restaurant, it's called Ponto Final. It's like the final, it's the end of the road. It's what it means. And it's mainly Portuguese food, traditional Portuguese food, fish. There's a lot of fish. And I think there are several people. There are a lot of people, kinds of people, different kinds of people that come here. You really feel that Lisbon is by the river, and the way the river goes into the city. I think it's a place where you get the best view.